We are starting right on time today. Uh, hey, Sam. This is United, a podcast for change. Hi, Christine. And I am Lori, your host. I, I have to shut off my volume on my YouTube. Uh, here we go. We got that. We got that. And let's see. Sam, I just want to make sure that you get my thank you for the tip from the premiere. And thank you to Christine for joining the Patreon community. I appreciate it very much. And just to explain very quickly how this works, the guests on the show are everyone watching. And you can either submit your thoughts through comments, you can click the link in the description and join via video, where you'll show up on the screen next to me. Uh, we are also, in a little bit, going to be giving it a shot, trying phone calls, where if you're not ready for your close up, Mr. DeMille, you are free to call, and this will be audio only. Um, it's probably going to be a little wonky with the sound if you call in, maybe, only because I don't have a mixer just yet. So it's literally going to be calling on the phone. The number that's on the screen will forward to my actual cell phone that I'll put on speaker and hold it up to the microphone. Just for right now until my mixer gets here. Um, this episode is anything goes. So, because the more I thought about it, yes, I want to promote civil dialogue, respectful dialogue, bridging the divides, and, basically getting back to understanding one another no matter what our positions are on different issues. Um, but I recognize that it's probably not going to be happy, happy, joy, joy all the time. So we may need a day to just vent and, not necessarily talk shit about people by name, but if you want to bitch about your neighbor that's driving you nuts, or people in traffic, or, your normal everyday irritants and pet peeves, if you want to rag about Congress, or whether it's state, federal, or however it runs in your country, however it is in Canada, just anything. So, we're also going to talk about some crazy news. We can talk about people in entertainment. It is anything goes tonight or on Wednesdays. Um, so if you want to talk about what's wrong with America, if you were unable to attend Monday's live stream, which that's fine. So if you want to talk about stuff from that, that's fine too. Um, Government needs way more women. I would agree. I would agree that we need way more women in government. I think we are better multitaskers. We're built for multitasking, because find me a woman that wears just one hat, pun not intended, after I said that. Uh, I mean, it's, especially if you're a mom. I mean, we have so many job titles just as a mom. It's ridiculous. But we're built for that. We're it's been said that if you want something said, give the job to a man. But if you want something done, give the job to a woman, because we're just better at it. I mean, the things that we can do that we continue to do while we're sick. Hey, John, except for John. You know what? If you want something done, yes, give it to a woman. The only exception to that rule is John, who does everything. Um, you make me tired just watching all of the stuff that you do. Um, so John, you are the exception to that rule. Thank you for joining us. And just can you take all my money? Hey, Kim, you know, John just released a whole shit ton of merch today that it's to the point where, just sign over your paychecks because it's all great merch. Thoughts of men competing against men in sports. Elaborate, sir. Men do compete against men. Men competing against women. Okay, so we're going to go right in on trans. You're talking about trans women competing against women. What are your thoughts? It's a complex issue for me. And the whole thing is just I mean, I don't understand it because I'm not. My gender identity matches with my biological sex, and my sexual orientation matches with, the norms, in the majority of society. There are no trans men competing against men. Well, I mean, I would think that trans men, this gets so confusing. Trans men started as biological women. I mean, there's difference. Exactly, Kim. We're built different physically. So, I would imagine that a trans man that a trans man biologically, I mean, unless they're taking, a shit ton of testosterone for years and different medications, that they're not going to be able to compete with biological men, which is probably why we don't see it. And that the reverse would be true for trans women competing against biological women. God, this is it's so complex. And it's just it's difficult because of the civil rights issue. And then there's also the gender dysphoria. And how is the best way to treat that? I can't imagine what it would feel like, or what it does feel like, to believe that I'm in the wrong body. I I can't imagine what that feels like. And then to have to wait until society says that it's okay for me to do things that feel right for society to accept me. I mean, I think an actual separate, I don't know, league, whatever you want to call it, um, where it's trans women against trans women and trans men against trans men. But then how far does that go? And where does it stop? Are we gonna have a trans Olympics? Or, and if it's not that many trans people looking to compete, no matter the sport, then they have to wait until there are enough people. If you've got one trans person looking to compete on a particular team, it's not like we can have a whole league because it's one person or two people. It is a complex issue. And I mean, for me, I'm not in sports. I'm not competing, so I really can't, it I don't think that my opinion on that would be appropriate because I'm not in sports. I think that we need to speak to the people that are and hear from the people that are in sports. And, but that no matter what, I would like to see leading with kindness and, because it's I mean, who are we to validate someone's existence? And and I would not push back on, that it's being pushed on children. I think that because it's such a complex issue that, I mean, I was a tomboy growing up. Never at any time did I think that I was a boy, but where I grew up, you know, I was the only girl my age. And I got well, why don't you play with dolls and why don't you do dress up? And ugh, I wasn't into that. I saw all the boys climbing trees and getting dirty and playing football and street hockey and, doing all that kind of fun stuff. And I I wanted to do that. So I was a huge tomboy. I loved climbing trees. I loved playing. We used to play tackle football until probably sixth grade when certain areas developed. And then the guys wanted to train it to two hand touch. And it took me a minute to realize why they wanted to change it to two hand touch. Um, but I never at any point thought that I was a boy. And there may be instances where, there and this gets into femininity, masculinity, what's a boy's toy and what's a girl's toy. I still have Matchbox cars that I had from, when I was a kid because I loved the badass muscle car Matchbox toys and Transformers. Like the boys got all the cool toys to play with. Lightsabers, you know, it is it pushing a trans movement on kids or is there maybe some confusion because kids are kids? They have imaginations and, "Oh, I wanna play with a boy's toy," so, parent wanting to, love my child no matter what. Well, is that me thinking that, my child's trying to tell me that they think they're a boy? Or vice versa, that if there's a boy that wants to play with dolls, that, "Oh, my son thinks he's a girl, and I wanna be accepting of my son," when it's just kids playing. And I mean, there's a lot going on in a lot of states. There's a lot of confusion. There's a it's not a cut and dry issue. I mean, do I think that anyone should be performing surgery on children? No. Do I think that kids should be getting puberty blockers? Mm, I don't think there's enough science on that yet. But then it's, what do you do? Do you do we as society force, and let's say legitimately there's a little girl that has gender dysphoria. She believes that she is actually a boy, that she's born in the wrong body. What do we do for her? Let's say she's 9. Do we force her to live as a boy? Do we force her to live as a girl? Because we as society, we haven't figured it out yet? Do we tell her that she's wrong? You know, it it's not it's complex. And there's so many variables, and that it's case by case. And as for the bathroom thing, women are worried about rapists coming into our bathrooms. That's what we're worried about. Murderers. We're not worried about a trans woman coming in to go pee, whether that person has fully transitioned or not. Ladies' bathrooms, we have stalls with doors. I've there's clubs in Atlantic City where it's one big bathroom. Stalls on one side, urinals on the other, and another wall with sinks. And then the doors in and out. I don't care. I've used those bathrooms. Hey Dawn, I would love I've peed in men's rooms. The line for the ladies' room is always ridiculous, because it seems like there are ladies that just can't just go in there, do what they have to do, wash their hands, get out, because there's people waiting in line. And there have been many times where there is a line for, like, a ridiculous line for the ladies' room, and there's no line for the men's room. Caught a guy coming out saying, "Hey, is there anybody else in there?" Nope. Can I run in? Sure. And then have the guy, and have that guy stand there and watch the door to make sure that no dudes came in while I was using the men's room. We're just going to the bathroom. You know, I I I personally don't have an issue with it, but I understand that the people that do, like, what they're really scared of are rapists and attackers coming into a woman's bathroom. What they're talking about is not actual trans women. They're talking about men who think it's okay to sexually assault women, to dress up like a woman, and then come into a late. They're talking about men taking advantage of it. You know, that's what they're talking about. It's not about trans women. You know, and what do we think is going to happen if you have a trans woman that hasn't fully transitioned, dressing as a woman, but because she has male genitals, well, she has to go into the men's room, but looks like a woman? Like, we don't think that she's going to be attacked verbally, physically. because some dude that is afraid and doesn't want this freak, this quote end quote freak in the bathroom. It's we have to get back to a point of respecting one another and just not being a dick. And Christine, you raise an excellent point. There are people that are intersex. They're born with a little bit of both in terms of genitals. They have extra chromosomes. What do we do? I mean, and granted, it's a very small percentage of the population, but these are still citizens with rights. Where do we put them? And it's usually decided at birth. Which one are we going to pick? Because you got a little of both. What if the parents pick the wrong one? And you have somebody that was born intersex with maybe female chromosomes, but because she has both male and female genitalia, her parents chose to keep the male part and raise her as a boy. When by her chromosomes, she's female. And her entire life she feels just wrong. She feels like like she should be female. What 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 do what do we do? And it's I can't imagine it. I can't imagine what that must feel like. To feel like I am in the wrong body. Every minute of every day, my skin feels wrong. I cannot imagine what that does to a person's psyche. What uh, the only thing I can do is try to be understanding, and not treat these people who it's no fault of their own, it's how they're born. They're not doing anything to change the wiring in their head. It's like and it's not that I'm comparing it to someone, that has depression or anxiety or like some type of addiction. It's because a lot of that has to do with the wiring in our brains as well. You know, and Daly makes an excellent point as well. It's, "Oh, I have, 4 I have 4 daughters and I wanted a son, but that 5th kid is intersex. They've got a little of both. So you know what? I'm gonna pick the boy because I always wanted a boy. And this is probably my last pregnancy. Or my husband really wants a boy." Where it's not taking into consideration w that child's physiology. I mean, it's it's so complex. And I would really like to see people, you know, approach all the different what ifs and all the different areas that this affects. I would love to see people approach it with kindness. Whether you understand it or not, because I know I don't. I don't know what it feels like. You know, kindness is not a weakness. Everyone deserves the right to exist. And if you're trans, if you have body dysphoria or body dysmorphia, like, you're not hurting any other person. Like, you're dealing with that yourself. Someone else having gender dysphoria doesn't affect my life, and another you guys are making such excellent points. We've always been afraid of what we don't understand. And instead of, you know, asking questions and finding out, it's let's demonize that thing that we don't understand. Let's make other people afraid of it because I'm afraid. Let's break out the pitchforks and the torches and go kill the ogre. Instead of finding out that the ogre wants nothing to do with us. The ogre's cool hanging out in the swamp, you know? And like, these are the kind of things that I want to address because just the stuff that I'm seeing, the whole, with all of the anti-trans and anti-LGBT, these laws that are being passed across the country, demonizing. And it's just, you know, and a lot of people use the, homosexuality as a sin. Yeah, in your religious book, not mine. What about the people where it says different in their religious book? Why doesn't their religious book count? We have the separation of church and state. There is no state religion in this country. And whatever you choose for your religion, or to choose not to have a religion, that is your choice. We have that freedom in this country. Oh, hi, Sue. I didn't real didn't you had a different didn't you have a different username the other day? But hi. Now that I know it's you, hi. You know, and if your religion has all these rules that you're supposed to follow, those rules supply or apply to you and everyone else that reads your religious book. You know, someone else's religious rules, they don't apply to me if I have a different religion or a different spirituality. You know, religion is not supposed to be mixed in with our laws because the United States is a secular nation. We are not built on Christianity. And I know that people would argue, well, like, our money says in God we trust. Yeah, it didn't used to. Or it did at one point, and then it was taken off. And then in the 50s, during the whole Red Scare, the whole communist thing, it was put back on. But it doesn't say which God. It just says in God we trust. And that the whole, let's see. We do have a chat. Let me read this. Where did it go? There it goes. We do have a separation of church and state. However, we also have a constitution that says what the federal government can do and what they can't. True. The federal constitution is the supreme law of the land. The state constitutions can give, generally speaking, can give their citizens more rights and freedoms than what are in the federal Constitution, but they cannot give them less. Um, so I mean, yeah, there are both federal and individual state constitutions, but a state constitution can't give its citizens less rights than what's in the federal Constitution. Um, and yeah, there is the amendment. Oh God, was it the 10th? I think it's the 10th Amendment in the US Constitution that says that if something isn't enumerated in the federal Constitution, then the issue goes to this. I remember it's the 10th Amendment. Um, that it's the difference between that if it's not covered by the federal, then the issue is left to the states. Um, but at the same time, there are rights that every American citizen should be entitled to. And whose interpretation is a great question. I think that a lot of the division that goes on now is where there are people just interpreting things how they like or what they think it means, or it's, oh, here's this line from the Federalist Papers. Here's, here's this person on YouTube who has a different opinion, where it doesn't matter where there's all this case law that says that, a particular, law or amendment is interpreted this way. And it's there's nothing wrong with debate. There's nothing, there is nothing wrong with that. Debate is what brought this country to its beginning. It all had to start somewhere with people, debating whether or not they wanted to continue to be English subjects. And, debate can be a wonderful, beautiful thing. And I have one of my favorite mugs today that I love. This is not, again, it's just soda. I felt like drinking it out of a mug. Let's see. I mean, those things aren't specifically mentioned. The Constitution was written by a bunch of men. They're not going to think of everything, but if we want to talk about abortion and women's reproductive rights, I would argue that women have bodily autonomy. And if bodily autonomy, just as a general rule, is, implied under a right of privacy that men get, well, then women should get that same right. And the Constitution has always been up for interpretation. That's what the Supreme Court does. The Supreme Court looks at laws and looks at the Constitution, and they interpret the Constitution as it relates to the law and the facts of a case. There's a ton of shit that is not specifically listed in the Constitution, whether it's the state constitution, the federal constitution. You know, that's how it gets interpreted. That's the purpose of the judicial branch, is to interpret the laws against the Constitution, the Constitution, the facts of the case. The judges interpret, and then the rest of us little people, we just debate it. Um, and if it's a big enough matter or a big enough issue, then yeah, the people push their states for an actual amendment. That's why we have, more than 10 amendments. See, and a man can go have a vasectomy at 18 and isn't asked much. A woman, they want you to have multiple kids, or a boy and a girl, before they will tie your tubes. Or they'll ask, for the husband's consent for the wife to get her tubes tied. It's disgusting. If a woman decides she doesn't want to have children and she wants to have her tubes tied at whatever age she is, as long as she's an adult, then she should have the right to do that without having to jump through a minefield. Get permission from who? My mom and dad, they had the same primary care doctor. And there were instances where they were both sick with the same thing. And my dad would go in, and the doctor would, prescribe medication, run all kinds of tests. My mother would go in with the same exact complaints. Just go home and, take some Tylenol, take some cough syrup. You'll be all right. And that's bullshit. We have the right to determine what happens with our bodies. If I'm not an organ donor and I die, which I will at some point, knock on wood, not today, not right now, that would suck. And I'm not an organ donor. When I die, nobody can harvest anything off of me legally. Even if I match with someone where they'll die without my kidney or my lung, they'll die without my blood. I cannot legally, I can't legally be forced to use any part of my body to save the life of another, whether I'm alive or dead. So what I don't understand is why women are forced to use their uterus to save the life of another human. If I can't be forced to save a living, breathing, real, person, then why can I be forced to use a body part for, and I'm going to say potential human? Because being pregnant doesn't guarantee that at the end of 9 months, a healthy baby is going to come out. That is the hope. There's no guarantee. So why is that existing person, I can watch that person die, and people will defend my right to not strip mine my body to save another person's life. But if that person hasn't been born yet and I'm pregnant with them, well, then I can be forced. I don't understand it because that just like and like if you are against having an abortion for yourself, if you're pro-choice, everybody, you're allowed to have your opinions. There is no wrong opinion. You know, and I would love to see constitutional amendments that actually codified equal rights for everyone. That it's just this is what it is, and it's I mean, it's easier in blue states, where the majority is Democrat, to get more civil rights for different groups of people. The issue are the states that are led by Republicans. I mean, that's where you're seeing, you know, the state House of Representatives, the state Congress, or the state Senate, where, they're entering laws they're taking people's rights away. Some of these states talk about, like, parents' rights when it comes to the schools, and what books the kids are reading. Yes, parents should be aware of what books their kids are reading. Parents should be aware of a lot of things going on with their kids. Taking away my right for, like, if I'm okay with my kid reading a book, well, it had to be removed from the school library because you said it couldn't be there. You didn't want your kid reading it. And it could be a book on anything. But if I'm okay with it, well, that's just too bad. Like, if people, that that is not necessarily true, Kim. I mean, Florida DeSantis just signed a bill, I think last week, where you have to provide documentation that you were raped. So is that a police report? Is it medical? And that's if it's, I think, after 6 weeks or before up. The the Florida ban is a real thing. Sometimes our news organizations they get it right. They're just reporting the news. And let's see. Florida rape abortion. And all right. So let's see. I don't need that. Okay. Seriously, computer? Stop it. right, so there's that. Let's right. So, all right. I mean, and this is from the local a local Florida newspaper. Let's see. A ban on most abortions after 6 weeks of pregnancy has been signed into law by DeSantis. And the bill could drastically limit the number of abortions performed in Florida, effectively banning the procedures. So let's see. And it is SB 300. So let's go look at actual SB 300. And all right. So, citing this act as the Heartbeat Protection Act, requiring the Department of Health to contract for the management and delivery of parenting support services in addition to pregnancy support services, prohibiting physicians from knowingly performing or inducing a termination of pregnancy after the gestational age of the fetus is determined to be more than 6 weeks rather than 15 weeks, with exceptions, providing an exception if the woman obtaining the abortion is doing so because she is a victim of rape, incest, or human trafficking, subject to certain conditions, requiring that medications intended for use in medical abortion be dispensed in person by a physician, etc. So that would be like no mail, that you can't get the like Plan B through the mail. All right, so bill text. Let's find this one. So we'll look, and a lot of this is just like, gotta love reading laws. Forming, blah 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 blah. Human traffickers, any person other than, well, yeah, I mean that seems like a duh. Prohibiting any person other than a physician from inducing a termination of pregnancy. Prohibiting physicians from using telehealth to perform abortions. Requiring that medication intended for use in a medical abortion be dispensed in person by a physician. Prohibiting the dispensing of such medication through the United States Postal Service. Blah, 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 blah. Heartbeat Protection Act. All right, and this section is basically the definitions. Use of state funds. I mean, we don't use state or federal funds for abortions anyway. More definitions. Department duties, contract requirements. And sorry if I'm scrolling too fast. For wellness serve, required a background screening, monitor subcontractors, blah, 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 blah. All right, here's the good part. Termination after gestational age of 6 weeks, when allowed. A physician may not knowingly perform or induce a termination of pregnancy if the physician determines the gestational age of the fetus is more than 6 weeks, unless one of the following conditions is met. 2 physicians certify in writing that, in reasonable medical judgment, the termination of the pregnancy is necessary to save the pregnant woman's life or avert a serious risk of substantial and irreversible physical impairment of a major bodily function of the pregnant woman other than a psychological condition. The physician certifies in writing that in reasonable medical judgment, there is medical necessity for legitimate emergency medical procedures for termination of the pregnancy to save the pregnant woman's life or avert a serious risk of imminent, substantial, and irreversible physical impairment of a major bodily function of the pregnant woman other than a psychological condition, and another physician is not available for consultation. The pregnancy has not progressed to the third trimester, and 2 physicians certify in writing that in reasonable medical judgment, the fetus has a fatal fetal abnormality. The pregnancy is the result of rape, incest, or human trafficking, and the gestational age of the fetus is not more than 15 weeks as determined by the physician. At the time the woman schedules or arrives for her appointment to obtain the abortion, she must provide a copy of a restraining order, police report, medical record, or other court order or documentation providing evidence that she is obtaining the termination of pregnancy because she is a victim of rape, incest, or human trafficking. If the woman is 18 years of age or older, the physician must report any known or suspected human trafficking to a local law enforcement agency. If the woman is a minor, the physician must report the incident of rape, incest, or human trafficking to the Central Abuse Hotline as required by Section 39.201. In person, honest to God, I can speak. In person performance by physician required. Only a physician may perform or induce a termination of pregnancy. Can't use telehealth. Any medications intended for use in a medical abortion must be dispensed in person by a physician and may not be dispensed through the United States Postal Service. And if you violate this section, it's a felony in the 3rd degree. Oh. Any person who performs or actively participates in a termination of pregnancy in violation of this section, which results in the death of the woman, commits a felony of the 2nd degree. Failure to comply. Protection and preservation of patient records. Blah, 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 blah. All right. So, we'll remove that. Hi, here I am again. So, I love reading laws. That was sarcasm. like, I'm a wordy person. It's part of my charm. Why use 3 words when I can use 15? Reading law, it sucks because it's so, I mean, my God, they just take it to a level that it's ridiculous. You know, part of the issue I have with these bans or laws like this one just signed in Florida is how long it can take a woman or a girl, if she's a minor and she's been assaulted. It, it's not, it's not like, okay, I'm 12 years old and I was essayed by, you know, the neighbor on Tuesday. You, you're not going to know on Wednesday whether or not you're pregnant. I mean, there's an ovulation period, and it's usually 2 weeks, on average, depending because it's different for every female. you know, and it can take you 2 weeks before you miss a period, and then I mean, I don't know if it's changed, but I know when I was pregnant with my son, you get asked, "What's the date of your last period?" So you're going back to the previous month or 2 weeks before, there was intercourse. So you're already starting off with extra pregnancy time. When it's not that you may know immediately with just, and if you're a minor and you're just starting to get your period, they can be irregular where it's not every month. So you don't know. And let's get rid of sex ed in school. So now you don't know that you're pregnant because you don't know. I mean, there are grown women that are pregnant and they don't know. And I mean, is that something that happens the majority of the time? No. The majority of the time, women know that they're pregnant when they realize, when they've maybe missed at least one period, but not everyone's the same. Yeah, I mean, and I would like to see the the debate on reproductive health. I really would like to see it be more factual, less emotion. I would like to see the pro-choice side. I mean, I understand why it's done. Kim, there are school districts that there are parents freaking out, um, that they don't want sex sex ed. I've seen the arguments. I've seen people going back and forth. I mean, I had it in 5th grade. And I mean, it's a funny story, but it's also a ridiculous story. We had sex ed in my in 5th grade in my elementary school, which was before I got my first period. Thank goodness. The boys were in one room, the girls were in another, and it was just all about, puberty and how your body was gonna change. It didn't go into, you know, sexual orientation, or it was a little bit about the mechanics of sex, that was just, tab A into slot B. It wasn't, you know, it was just the mechanics. And yes, Sam, my parents had to sign a waiver as well. Um, and when I got home from school that day, uh, I'd gone, like, I was playing with, friends and stuff, and then, after my parents had come home and, it was time to come in, for dinner and shit, I will never forget. My mother was standing at the sink washing dishes, and, I mean, and I was excited when we had that class. I thought it was pretty cool to find out that, my body was gonna change. I thought that was cool. I love knowledge. And so my mother, she asked me, "How was school today? What what did you do?" And I was like, "Oh, like, we had, health class, and, we talked about, like, periods and, puberty." And my mother turned to me, and this is the only thing that my mother has ever said about the talk. She turned to me and she said, "You know, Laura, when a woman gives birth, she lactates for 3 days before the milk comes into her breast so she can breastfeed." That was it. I'm like, we didn't cover babies. Like, I, I walked away very confused, and that is the only thing my mother ever told me about sex. Um, you know, and I mean, and I'm 53. I'll be 54 in August. It was you wore pads for your period. That if you used tampons, you were a slut. You didn't use tampons. And if you had your period, like, that was it. There was no swimming. There was, it was like, you almost needed to go be in a corner. Like, you need to stay away from people. And not that it was, like, "Oh, you're dirty." Um, but it was just like it was something to be embarrassed about, something to be ashamed of. Um, I mean, and yeah, that sucked to not have, that knowledge, you know, that welcome to womanhood and the celebration of, joining the sisters. Even just explaining the the pain of cramps and your lower back. Chris, I was 17 because I had a couple girlfriends who their mother went through everything with them, and they were very well adjusted about how their bodies would change and just what that meant. And I we were all supposed to go swimming, and I got my period, and I'm like, "Oh, I can't go." "Why can't you go?" "Well, I have my period." And they're like, "Pfft, put in a tampon and come on." I I don't I don't I don't know how to do that, and I had to have, they had to walk me through it. And they just kept looking at me like, "How do you not know this?" Because I was told that I had to use pads or I was a slut. That only sluts use tampons. That, you know, and it's just like, it's ridiculous. The things that it's normal bodily function for females, you know. w- I, I I don't. Oh my God, no swimming during Shark Week. I actually wouldn't. Oh, you know what? I read that wrong. I get it now, but I wouldn't go in swimming in the ocean if I had my period because, that was a big. I don't even know if that's like a rumor, if that's a real thing. Yeah. The period underwear and the period bathing suits. Oh, I don't know about that. I mean, I know that I'm through menopause, and for you ladies that haven't experienced it, oh my goodness, it's so much fun. Sarcasm. Um, if I was still getting a period. I don't know if I could go, uh, I don't know. I mean, if it's absolutely leak proof, okay, great. But I just have this thing in my head, you know, of, well, like, where does it all go? Oh, perimenopause, I hated it. I hated it. I think I had it for like 8 years, and I mean, it was great, and again, that's sarcasm, because when my period, when it was just normal period, I was every 28 days, unless I had sex somewhere in that time period, and then it would go 30 days, and that was the norm for me. Perimenopause, I mean, it would last for, like, 5 days at the most. Perimenopause, it was, "Okay, here's your period," like a normal one, "and then you're gonna bleed for 10 days." That it's just gonna be varying degrees of, roller coaster. Light, heavy, heavy, light, light, heavy, light, where, all the rules that you've been living by for the past 30 years, we're done with those. And it's just, we're just gonna, spin the wheel. And just see, oh, you know what? Here here's back pain that maybe you would only get, like, once every 6 months. Oh, in addition to the back pain, here's some cramps where you feel like someone is, like, ripping your insides out on top of the back pain, and, you're gonna have a period for 10 days, and when you're done with that, you're thinking, "Okay, cool, I'm gonna be good for, until next month, another 30 days from now." No, 3 weeks later, here's another full-blown period, and then, "Oh, now we're really gonna freak you out. We're gonna go, 6 weeks without one." To where you're thinking, "Oh, when did I have sex with someone? Am I pregnant? What is going on?" And it's just going to it's for me, it drove me nuts. I had to constantly carry, pads, tampons, because I didn't know when it was gonna come. I didn't know how bad it was gonna be, because it used to be like, the first day, a couple days would be, like, light, it might be some spotting. Perimenopause, it would come in guns blazing, like, and it it drove me nuts, and then that went on for me, and it can be different for, 'cause it's different for every female. That went on for me for, like, 8 years, and what pisses me off the most is that I had just restocked all of, like, my feminine hygiene products and everything, so I have, like, this, drawer that's full, because I was just going through so much when I was getting it, and I just restocked my drawer, and then it stopped, and I was done, and I'm like, "You son of a bitch." Like, I just spent all this money, on all this stuff. So if you guys ever come over to my apartment, like, I still have everything, like, I'm like, I have supplies for anyone that may need supplies if you wanna come over. Um, I never I never got the acne. That I didn't have, but that's gotta suck too. It all just sucks. It just sucks being female a lot of the time, and just all the different shit that we go through. It would be nice if we could just talk about these things openly, you know, and not just with our girls, but with our boys, so that our boys like, I fully believe that we should all have a working knowledge of how reproduction works and how, you know, a female body works, how a male body works. And because these the things that people don't know about reproduction, and like mostly women's reproductive organs and how they work, it's just crazy. I thought, Kim says, my crap was all messed up. I got mine's taken out. I thought about it, but then it was like, I mean, I was relatively, I don't like using the word normal, but I mean, I can't imagine what it would be like for someone with like endometriosis or, like the different, things that just plague women. Because why not? We can handle everything. Give it all to us. I might not be able to beat up a dude in a bar fight, but you know, I can still go to work with cramps. And I'm loving these I'm loving how the conversation is just flowing in and out of different topics. I think that is wonderful and lovely, and you know, big ups to everyone for being respectful. I love organic conversation. And I'm one for like I could be talking about one thing and then just the tangents are everywhere. That is definitely my thing. Um, you know, but I love that we're listening to one another. And that's one of the things that I'm shooting for with this podcast, and and the community that gets built around it, is that, you know, and I know that we all, that we trust each other. Like I'm not here to say that my way or my beliefs are the right way. I have always been willing to, admit when I don't know something, or when I am, well, it's rare, but when I'm wrong, you know, um, I have no problem admitting that. I have no problem saying I'm sorry when I screw up, because I'm human. Um, but I just really appreciate the support that you guys have given me, and just that, yeah. Um, I'm gonna co-sign with Kim and say that Chris can do the bar fight. Kim, who's working it out, who I'm glad every day that I'm on her good side. you know? Um, but just I really appreciate that everyone is respectful, you know, and it just it it further, I don't know, cements, if that's the right word, that this idea I had was a good one. Um, like it's just been so cool, doing these. And I'm still getting the hang of it. Um, oh, you know what? While I'm here, where's he at? Samantha, you'll appreciate this. I have I don't know if you can see him, my up there, right there. It's my Eddie Van Halen Funko Pop. And I've decreed that he's one of like the little guardians over the podcast. So he sits up there. Um, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Eddie Van Halen, which is a story for another day. Um, but I just got a new guardian, Samantha. Let me know when you're ready. I love you guys too. Let me know when you're ready, Sam. Um, because I thought of you when I bought it. Um, we have a second guardian angel at the podcast, and it is this guy. It is Uhtred, son of Uhtred. Destiny is all, from the Last Kingdom, and Seven Kings Must Die. I just got him in on I think it was Monday. I love him. So he is our second podcast. I don't know, mascot, guardian angel, whatever you want to call him. But he's here. And so we'll put him back next to Eddie so that they can both watch over us. Because one thing I love, Uhtred always did what was right. He kept his word, whether you liked it or not. He had integrity. He was a warrior. And I think that's cool. If there are any dudes that want to tell me that I can't have an Uhtred, son of Uhtred, Destiny is all Funko Pop, or an Eddie Van Halen Funko Pop, because I'm a girl, get bent. Respectfully. What else do you guys want to talk about? We've been going. I was destroyed when Eddie Van Halen passed away. Because it's not an exaggeration. If it was not for Eddie Van Halen, I wouldn't be here. I would have been long gone. Gone for almost 40 years gone. Because I almost unalived myself when I was about 12. And it was the music of Van Halen, specifically Eddie's contribution to Van Halen 1, called Eruption, that stopped me. Because a little voice in my head whispered, listen to I was looking at my records, screaming and crying hysterically with the razor blade in my hand. And this little voice whispered, play it. And what I was looking at was Van Halen 1. And I did. I put the razor blade down and I put on Van Halen 1, and I went to Eruption, put the headphones on, and turned it up to 11. And I don't know how many times I listened to that song, and I know I'm dating myself, but picking up the needle and restarting it. I don't know how many times I did that, but that screaming guitar cut through all the nonsense going on in my head, where I was having an argument with myself of do it, don't do it. And yeah, so I will always be grateful that Eddie Van Halen created a piece called Eruption that, he shared with the world. Um, and what's it called? And that's music. I mean, we know our boys in Shinedown that they've done the same thing for people, where they have music that, it doesn't stop it. They don't stop you, but the music reaches a place where you can find the strength, within yourself to keep fighting. Um, and like what's crazy about that day is that from the time because I got picked on a lot in elementary school and through parts of high school by the same people. Um, there's actually one guy that if I saw him now, 45 years later, he would still give me shit um, because he's a dick and he never grew up, which whatever. Um, you know, I can remember everything about what happened once I got off the bus and, ran into the house and upstairs to my room and, the crying and I mean, and almost like breakdown, um, crying and and just every moment of that and what I was thinking and, the screaming that was going on in my head and crying hysterically. And I remember that the boys, that made fun of me, I remember that they did something, but I can't remember what it was. I can remember thinking, on my knees in my room, I can't take it anymore. But I can't remember, what was said or what they did. It was a that's it. Um, and just and stuff like that, like, humbles me because if I had gone through with it, like how ridiculous would it be or would it have been to unalive myself over something that I can't remember what it was now, and that in the grand scheme of things doesn't matter. I'm over 50 and no longer give a shit what people think. I don't care what people think about my clothes, how I look, what I believe. I am who I am. I know that I'm a good person. I know that I care about people. I know that I'll do anything for anybody. And like me, don't like me, I don't care. It's not about my life isn't about somebody else liking me. All the things that, you know, we worried about as kids. I don't care. I've stopped, letting other people's opinions. And for years I let other people's opinions rule me and make and have control over my decisions over what is going to do on any given day. And now I'm like, nope. And I am so much happier because I don't give a shit anymore. Like, I don't care. I'm not hurting anyone. In fact, like, I'm actively trying to help people just in my day to day. I always try to be kind. Kind isn't weak. It's easier to, point fingers and be an asshole than it is to be kind, especially if somebody's being mean to me. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm going to take any shit, but, I've gotten to the point where, if somebody's freaking out about something, I can actually like look at them calmly and have a calm discussion. Um, so big ups and big thank yous to Eddie Van Halen because it's just and Shinedown and music in general because I've learned so much about myself and changed things that I wanted to change and it's been really cool to like pick and choose who I want to be as a person. Um and a lot of that is because of music. Um we'll leave this up. And let's see. Oh, it's crazy flipping over to the YouTube because there's a delay. And I have the volume down, so it's like my mouth is moving, but I can't hear anything, which is just weird. Um, and let's see what other crazy stuff is going on. Do we want to talk about? Um, Anybody have any stuff that's just like pissing them off? And you just need to vent because that's allowed too. Or any questions? I announced the other day, like I have signed up for Spotify. I just want to get a few episodes under my belt, because it's recommended that you upload a few because people like to binge. I don't know, but we're gonna try that. Uh, I have I've ordered samples of merch. I have a T-shirt that I designed and like a muscle shirt. Um, because I'll get to tank tops. Um, Muscle shirts I find. I mean, one you can cut them all up and whatever. But I find like the side they're I don't have to worry about my bra showing because I don't like when my bra shows. So I have a T-shirt and a muscle shirt that should be here within the next couple days. Um, then I'm gonna check those out, and then if I like them, um, then I'm gonna get the store up and going. Um, I am gonna be looking at exclusive merch for people that are in the Patreon community. If you haven't already done so, because I totally forgot, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Um, I've hooked up with Spotify. I just want to make sure that I got everything that all the like the business. I'm gonna stop using the air quotes. I apologize. I'm Italian, and I'm constantly like this anyway. So I've been trying not to do that because I know that that can be annoying for some people. Um, so sorry. Um, let's Air quotes are not cool, Christine. They are not. They are not. Okay, maybe one or two during a conversation, fine, whatever. I think I was doing it too much. So my apologies for that. Um, like, does anyone have anything they want to chit chat about? Questions, topics? Because this is just Wednesdays are basically bitch sessions. It's the middle of the week, and how dare it not be Friday already? So it's just it's some time set aside to vent frustrations and things that are bugging us about anything. Um, so that we can you go strike that strike, Christine. Be safe and but just kind of like purge that negative emotion. Not wish any negativity on anyone, or anything like that. But it's not going to be all, it's not all happy, happy, joy, joy, you know? So We need, I believe, we need to be able to vent. We need to be able to be frustrated and express frustration or even anger. Holding those negative emotions inside never works out well. It might in the short term, but not in the long run. Um, so I wanted to create a space for that as well. Um, there won't be a podcast tomorrow because usually I do these at 7 o'clock on Thursdays. As many of you know, I'm watching our friend John's podcast, Spear Talk podcast, on YouTube. That premieres at 7 on Thursdays. So um, there won't be a podcast tomorrow. Our next podcast or live stream will be Friday at 7. And Fridays are fun days. So Fridays are going to be to, like today we're talking about we're purging the negativity and we're just, anything goes. Fridays are going to be about the good things so that we can go into our weekend, you know, with some positivity. We have our days for specific topics. We're going to take a day to purge negativity and then we're going to have a day of like, gratitude to talk about the good things that we all have going on in our lives because if you're on the right side of the dirt, you're winning. Everything else is just cake. Um, and it's good to, talk about our blessings and talk about the good things, talk about the things that we have in common with one another, no matter what labels we wear. Um, so that's what we're going to be doing on Friday, and I hope that everybody can join us. So if there are no questions, uh, then we're going to wrap things up. We've been going on for about like 90 minutes, and I don't want to take up like a crazy amount of everyone's time. It's been a wonderful conversation tonight. I want to thank everyone again for joining and offering your thoughts. Um, we're going to work our way up to phone calls and video call-ins. I'm going to wear you guys down, I promise. So, and maybe I expect that'll happen just as we get more comfortable with airing our thoughts. But thanks again to everyone who came in and have a great night.